I can go ahead and tell you right now, JT, it's because, once again, he falls into that category of who wants to join the roster? We're 46 deep, and we need 7 more guys on the team. Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast for Monday, August 19th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined, as always, by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, preseason week 2 down. We were both there last night. How are you?
Hello. I am good. It feels good to be get another win in the Brian Callahan undefeated preseason winning streak.
Never lost.
They have not lost yet under the Brian Callahan regime, so that's always good to see. But back with another Sunday recap show. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, I love doing these shows. I am happy that we're doing them. I am most looking forward to when we have Sunday Titans games to react Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to lie. JT and I could technically have gone live on Saturday night the last 2 weeks to recap preseason games. We're not going to do that. Let's be real. Let's be realistic here. We will do that the night of real games, but preseason games, you gotta take it off every once in a while. As Joey in the comments says, it's not Monday yet, Easton. Joey, you're not new here. You know how this works. We are live on a Sunday afternoon, recording our podcast for Monday morning. So if you're here live, you're just getting it early, baby. We appreciate all of you that are here with us live. If you are, make sure you're watching over on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Find the live stream over there on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Join the comment section where Wyatt and Zach and Stoney are all going crazy. Zach saying, it's Sunday, go to church, you heathens. Well, I generally agree with the sentiment. Zach, that's what Sunday mornings are for, my friend. Sunday afternoons are, of course, for football. Stoney saying, gone off the Yazoo dancing in the car to Club Hot Read. Stoney, the reigning champion of the dance floor here at Club Hot Read. Of course, appreciate you being in here. Guys, we've got a lot to talk about on the heels of what was the single most boring game the Titans will play all year long. So congratulations, clap it up. You got through the hard part. It's all uphill from here. No,
I don't know. I don't know if you want to put that out there.
You're not confident in that?
You never know, man. I'm just not going to, stranger things have happened.
No, they haven't. I'm not going to even let that possibility be out there in the ether. It will not get worse than it was yesterday.
I would not
is generally just the worst.
Oh yeah, sentiment though.
Yes, and so we saw no starters. We saw a lot of backups that played. Some of them half the game, some of them the full game. And while it was boring, it did serve to, I think, clarify a handful of things. The way that the coaches deployed certain guys gave us really strong clues as to how they view these guys in the depth chart as they start to come together with this final 53-man roster, which, JT, we will know who is on the final 53 in, 9 days from now, August 27th, not this upcoming Tuesday, but next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is when the 53-man cut down is. Titans, of course, have just one more preseason game to get out of the way. They'll be on the road in New Orleans next Sunday, by the way. So that is a Sunday show. We'll do Sunday afternoon. The Titans, I believe, play at 1 local time, noon, so that afternoon at some point. And then we will be done. We'll have this preseason pox off of our house. We'll be on to the regular season, and we'll get the roster cut down shortly thereafter. We're going to go through pretty much every position group today and talk about what we definitely know with, again, 9 days left until the 53-man cut down. I think we know for sure, locked in, set in stone, a lot about this roster, a lot more than we don't know. There are only a handful of things at this point, in my opinion, that are still up in the air. So we're going to discuss the things that we do and do not know in terms of the depth chart. We'll talk about impressive performances last night, of which there were a handful, some disappointing performances last night, of which there were a couple. Getting to all of that, and then a little bit of news before we get out of here on a Sunday afternoon. Make sure you're liking and subscribing, though, before we get started. If you're not subscribed on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. It's free to you. It's very helpful to us. We appreciate you doing that. Make sure you're following us on social media at Hot Read Pod. Before I dive into the meat of today's show, JT, and we've got a number of clips, by the way, from Brian Callahan, both post-game on Saturday evening and from today's press conference at the Titans facility. I see the comments just going nuclear. Am I missing something of actual import, or are people just making fun of us?
No, there's really nothing of consequence in here. Wyatt asking some questions that we'll get into. James saying Stoney and Zach on a sugar high after housing that Pizookie.
They clearly are. Yes.
I don't know what a Pizookie is,
That'd
but
be a pizza cookie. That'd be a. I believe a cookie cake is what most people refer to it as, but these two weirdos on brand with the Pizookie moniker there, which I support. I think that's a fun name.
And Jordan Lowry says the legend of Mason Kinsey might be over. We'll get into that and much more.
It's always over this time every year, and yet the legends never die, right? I mean, that's the way that it works. He always comes back. He's like a Marvel
heroes
character. You can't kill him. They always come back in one way or another.
Never die. That is true.
Right.
Wyatt asking, how much sleep are you getting each night, EF?
Enough. I really can't complain. The whole baby sleep situation. I'm sleeping, significantly worse than I did before we had a baby, but I am sleeping significantly better than my wife is because, the dirty little secret about the beginning of parenthood is the first year or so, the father is pretty useless. I can wake up in the middle of the night in solidarity and support when it's time to feed, but I can't feed the child. That is on the mother of the child. And so, she's sleeping worse than I am, and she's a trooper. So I'm not going to complain because I don't have any room to complain, but not sleeping super well, but doing just fine. Okay. So the Titans last night, they win just a thriller of a game, 16-15, 2 clutch fourth quarter field goals from Brayden Narveson. Where were you for the Brayden Narveson game?
Narvin Mania.
The Narv wall himself. That's a question we're going to be asking ourselves. There are grandchildren will be asking us that generations
Titans
from now.
Legend Narwhal.
Yeah, one might say. We'll talk about him and the kicking situation in a little bit. But they win, and as you mentioned, Brian Callahan undefeated. Let's start here with an injury update from the man himself at today's press conference. He gave yet another detailed rundown, which thank God for Brian Callahan and the way that he just gives us this information. It is so nice. Here's a detailed breakdown on where the Titans are health-wise.
The ones that kind of matter, Jha'quan Jackson has a knee bruise essentially. He's questionable to play in the game Sunday. We'll see how it comes. Those things are kind of tricky. They can be pretty painful and they can linger, or they can come back quickly. So that one's sort of open-ended and up in the air. I'll just keep him at week to week for now. Jabari Small is in the concussion protocol. You likely won't see him this week. There's a long list of things that I got, but the main ones are the main ones. I wouldn't, Josh Wiley's still in the protocol as well. I think he's got a chance to get back this week. Kyle Phillips with the hamstring, probably out this week, but we'll see. After that, that's the main ones. Hopeful to get Stonehouse potentially some work, a punt or two in the game on Sunday. We'll see where that's at, but that's the goal. It's kind of always been our target is to get him back on the field, that last step in the rehab process, feeling some live action. It was just good to see him play.
So a couple of key notes there, and I do find it funny the way he phrased it. Here are the ones that actually matter, which implies that there are some guys that are hurt on the team that don't matter, which is tough for them. Stonehouse, welcome back. Sounds like he's going to get a little bit of run in New Orleans next week, so that's exciting. We're going to hear later the plan from Brian Callahan in terms of the rest of the starters, some insight on that today as well. Let's go ahead and dive into the wide receiver situation because you heard a couple of key wide receiver notes in there. Both Jha'quan Jackson and Kyle Phillips down for the count right now, both expected to miss at least some time this week, may both miss the third and final preseason game of the year. And while we talked on Thursday's show about how, and if you've missed this, let me catch you up to speed, the Titans wide receiver competition is over. They are keeping 6 receivers: DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and Jha'quan Jackson. Yes, he wins the competition. The 6th-round rookie has done enough to impress and be the punt returner and be your 6th wide receiver on the team. He wins. So that is good news for him. And you saw last night, he led the team in receiving. I believe he went 4 for 4 on receptions for 57 yards, averaging 14.3 yards per reception. A big night for him. Really showed off his ability already as a young developing route runner to get the ball. And when he has the ball in space, show off that speed, show off that that slipperiness. He's a tricky one to get down in the open field. Yet another guy I think you can fairly add to the list of Titans players who are real playmaking threats on offense when they have the ball in their hands, which is a really cool thing. So that's one of the theme of today's show is going to be things that we know, as I deemed it on Twitter last night, roster realities at this point, things that are going to be talked about like competitions this week, but they really aren't. The first of those is, and again, we knew this already before this game, Jha'quan Jackson's the sixth receiver. He's the dude. I will allow for one exception. And while we talked about, we're pretty certain it's going to be 6 receivers because Brian Callahan has more than once now referred to, we're going to keep 5 or 6 guys active on game day. And so that's kind of the clue we're keying off of there, as well as the way that his teams have operated in the past. He has in the last, 36 hours now, intentionally mentioned Mason Kinsey by name twice, once pre-game on Titans radio, talking about how Mason Kinsey has a chance to really solidify himself as a contributor to this team. And then once today at the press conference, he brought up Mason Kinsey semi-unprompted, saying, he's got versatility. He can play on special teams. He can play inside and out. He's got a pretty wide skill set as a depth receiver. And so him continuing to mention Kinsey makes me think that if I'm wrong about anything on the wide receiver depth chart, it may be that, and JT, I'll let you kind of explain this. There may just be room at the bottom of the 53-man roster for lack of a better word, like charity guys. Like, who wants to be on this team? Because we got room, and who's the most talented amongst you? You and I were talking about this last night. There's going to be room for some of those guys.
Yeah, I think, that game was boring to a point where in the mid to late third quarter, I just impromptu started making my first mock-up of a 53-man official roster. And so I was going down and I was checking people off. I'm like, yeah, this guy's definitely on the team. Yes. And so then after I got through all my checks, I went back down through the list and I said, damn, I only have 46 guys. There's 7 spots. There's 7 spots that could be open. And so I think the point is they're definitely, and I may have been a little shallow on guys in the defensive line room. They probably will end up keeping a guy or two more than I had projected in that impromptu mock. They'll probably keep another safety than I gave them or another corner, but that's still, there still is room, after that, after they keep a couple of those extra guys for 1 or 2 spots where Brian Callahan may have the opportunity to kind of keep a guy on the team. I think that's the most important thing here, is that, we are going off the precedent of Brian Callahan with the Bengals and what he said, but obviously opportunities arrive with injuries and whatnot, to the point where, this may be a special situation that there just isn't that much depth on that's worth keeping on the back end, to where you can have a guy like Mason Kinsey who, plays a special role in Brian Callahan's scheme and works efficiently to the point where he actually might be a really useful tool for him this year.
Well, and we add to that the possibility of DeAndre Hopkins missing a game or two to begin the year. So while I am certain the top 6 receivers are the 6 we've named, Jha'quan Jackson is wide receiver 6, I will allow a 7.5% chance that the roster comes out and they keep a 7th receiver and it's Mason Kinsey. If they do keep one, it is Mason Kinsey. I'm almost certain of that. And that's just because he keeps hinting at it, and he is the most versatile of the rest of the guys, and he offers
available.
Yeah, and available, right? And so some people might be, listeners to the show may be like, oh, fellas, you guys came in on after the last preseason game and said it's down to the 2 Jacksons. What happened to Kyrus? Kyrus got hurt. That's what changed the math here. So I don't think we're being.
It's also important to note that
on that,
available, yes. Mason Kinsey broke his finger last night and then went back into the game.
He tweeted, "I don't know what to do with my hands." After that, I don't know if you saw that afterwards. Yeah,
I did not, but
don't care. Broken fingers doesn't matter.
Continuing through his injury to be available is something that's so important to this Titans team right now, especially in the wide receiver department when you have guys like Kyrus Jackson, Kyle Phillips, and DeAndre Hopkins go down with injury. This is a more brittle wide receiver room than I think you would like. So having those guys who can play through injury and for are relatively are available, that's something that is invaluable.
So big night for Jha'quan Jackson. The guys that were throwing him the ball, of course, Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis, they flip-flopped quarters. So you got 1 and 3 from Willis, 2 and 4, again, roughly, from Mason Rudolph. And the second roster reality that we can say with certainty now is Mason Rudolph is your backup quarterback. And frankly, he kind of always was, but I think last night's first half in particular, and I know this is reductive, but I think what you saw at the end of the first half last night really crystallized the reality here of Mason Rudolph coming in after Malik Willis has played and toiled with the same group for pretty much the entirety of the game so far. And then Mason Rudolph comes in and in his first drive with the team marches down 10 plays, 70 yards, and they get the touchdown. I would sum it up this way, JT. Yes, Malik Willis has made strides. He has improved this offseason, no doubt. But that's a relative term, right? And while he has improved, he is definitively not better than Rudolph. And when you look at the sum of both of their careers, I think the summary of Malik Willis is you look at that and you say, if we ever have to roll that out there in a real game, we're screwed. It's over. This is a white flag move. And with Mason Rudolph, the summary of his career watching it, you say, if we have to roll this out in a real game, we've got a fighter's chance. We got a puncher's chance. We might be able to eke out a win with this guy. And that's the biggest difference between them. That's the reason why Mason Rudolph was sought out by the team in the early stages of the free agency period, why he was brought in to be the backup in the first place over Malik Willis. Will Malik Willis miss the 53-man roster? I have been consistent in saying I am skeptical that they keep a third quarterback just because the three quarterback, the new rule, it's all overblown. People don't understand what it means. In terms of roster construction, it really doesn't mean anything. It's a provision in the rule book that allows for a very, very rare instance where you are desperate and you're about to have to play a skill position player as a quarterback. Let's get a real quarterback in there. That's all it does. It doesn't change the numbers or the math on who you can and can't keep. Again, if he makes the roster, I can go ahead and tell you right now, JT, it's because, once again, he falls into that category of who wants to join the roster? We're 46 deep and we need 7 more guys on the team. Who's it going to be? So maybe he gets in there. Well, what are you thinking right now? Are you leaning he is in or out?
I unfortunately think he's out, especially after what I saw last night. Practice squad for sure. He'll be on the practice squad, but just the difference in night and day to process your looks and go through your reads and make plays was the biggest defining factor. I looked at Mason Rudolph progress through his reads and play very well, dicing down the field. Malik Willis, 4 times, missed the wide open seam guy in the middle, and I was just trying to pull my hair out. You just missed this guy wide open. He's made strides.
That's such a good point. That from a vibes perspective, watching them is so different. With Willis, it's constant frustration, and with Rudolph, it's just yawning and boring. That's a big difference, right?
It's safe.
That's how you
it's
feel
safe
watching.
And it's boring. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I would say he's made strides. I would say that his pocket presence, for the most part, is better than it has been. There, I still kind of have etched in my brain the Malik Willis of London when he had to fill in for Ryan Tannehill during the Ravens game. That is the mind. That is kind of the precedent I have for Malik Willis. And
that was kind of the all-time. That was the bottoming out of the Malik Willis experience.
It really was. And so seeing that yesterday, it got better, but still you're making things where he should be throwing to a read that he doesn't, or he's tucking and running when he has a guy, he's
failing clean pockets.
The decision making is still not there, and I think that's the most frustrating thing. So worth a practice squad position, I totally agree. But Mason Rudolph, like you said, it's the safe, it's the boring option that you can. He's more of a cookie cutter quarterback that you can kind of like they did with Jake Browning last year, just kind of throw in there and maybe tweak a few things here or there. But for the most part, your system's going to stay relatively the same.
Joey in the comments puts a button on it, right? I will take boring over terrified if we end up in that situation where one of them has to play 100%. So we can move on from that. And I'm glad that we have some clarity on that quarterback competition. Moving on to one last thing on the wide receivers, actually. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, a guy that's going to make this roster, has never really been in doubt to make the roster. Played a lot of ball last night, and he caught that touchdown there at the end of the first half. And a lot of folks, myself included, were saying, why is this guy in the game? Get out of the, like, he's not just in the game. He's like running crossing routes and getting laid out, making really difficult catches and getting crushed. It's like, dude, what are we doing? Get this guy out of the ball game. I asked Brian Callahan about why he, and by the way, notably not in the game at any point, Treylon Burks, two guys that folks, I think, are back and forth on, okay, who's the 4 and who's the 5, who's really proven themselves to be that guy. With Burks, it's the ceiling. With NWI, he's just that constant. Why is NWI playing almost a half of football and Burks on the bench? And here's the answer from Brian Callahan last night.
I mean, we wanted to put him in position to make some plays for us, which he did. It was good to see him get in the end zone. Not that I need to see a lot from NWI. I know what he's capable of and how productive he's been. But we know, when you got as many guys as we have, he's kind of forced into action. You know what I mean? So he's got to be able to play a little bit, and hopefully it allowed the quarterbacks to play well. Sometimes there's a comfort level in having some of those types of players out there with you, and that's just kind of where you're at.
Is him playing in Treylon not a reflection of hierarchy, or is that just different guys, different situations?
Different guys, different situations, different positions too.
With injury.
Yeah.
So I found that last comment interesting, volunteering. Hey, they also play different positions. And so at today's press conference, I followed up with him, and I didn't record it. It's on my social media account at Easton Freeze on Twitter if you want to go listen to it, because I pulled it from the Titans feed. He clarified, and I'm paraphrasing, that Burks is going to be playing the X primarily, that outside boundary receiver, the direct backup to DeAndre Hopkins. And NWI is going to be primarily, and he's more versatile, so he'll play some outside, some at the Y, but primarily at that Z flanker position, which is the direct backup to Calvin Ridley. That comes as a bit of a surprise to people. Burks, we've not really known throughout this offseason where he's going to be playing primarily, if they're going to be moving him around a lot, if he's going to be a multiple guy. Early on, guys like me were clamoring, hey, maybe let's get some run in the slot for him. That's where he excelled in college. Like, maybe big slot is the spot for Treylon. This coaching staff has decided that he's going to be the direct backup to the X receiver to DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know if I love that, but I am certainly going to defer to their expertise. And if this, I'll say it this way, if it's still the Vrabel regime, I'd be rolling my eyes at that, because I'll be like, let's try something different. It's not working so far. With this new coaching staff, new offense, I try. They have enough implicit trust from me offensively and scheme wise to at least let me see what it looks like. But in his answer, sorry not to cut you off, JT, he did say that was the biggest reason why NWI got play last night, right? Is because with already one X down and DeAndre Hopkins, we'd like to go into week 1 with our backup X intact, and that's Treylon Burks. So we don't want to risk him getting hurt. With NWI, not a big risk. Ridley's healthy. They've got more guys that can play the Y, and so they got him out there.
Somewhere out there in I believe the United States of America, there is one random person who found their way into the Titans Combine Media scrum, dancing that his question about,
right.
Hey, is Treylon Burks an X-type receiver like Jamar Chase? And Brian Callahan laughing at him. He's now who's laughing now, Brian? Because,
I mean, listen. That guy is screaming, never wrong, just early. Somewhere he probably came from Ohio, knowing Ohio.
Yes.
I think that's a good point. Great call.
I personally wasn't surprised by him, being that X or being considered the backup to DeAndre Hopkins, when we really have been talking about Treylon as the guy to step up in Hopkins' absence. Like, I feel like I think that was pretty, for me at least, that was pretty cemented that, he's going to play the kind of role that DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to play. And we've seen that kind of, in that first preseason game, we saw Treylon, when he was out there, play that kind of DeAndre Hopkins quick in slant kind of role for Will Levis to, catch and throw. And so we're seeing, maybe when we talk about X, we're talking about, the confusion and the shock probably goes from DeAndre Hopkins' style of being an X outside receiver is different from what Treylon Burks looks like and you imagine as an X outside receiver. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Moving on here to the tight end position. We got a clip from Brian Callahan today. He was asked about the possibility of keeping 4 tight ends on the roster. There's a guy on this team that stood out for a second consecutive week last night. We'll get to him in just a second. But he not only talks about 4 tight ends in this answer, he kind of echoes what we talked about earlier in the show. Hey, when we get down to the 47th, 48th, 49th guy we're trying to keep on this active roster in a couple of days, it is a lot less about, okay, well, we need a 6th safety, and it's a lot more about who are the best guys available.
I mean, we'll run a lot of 11 personnel, but we have plenty in the 12 and 13 world that we've have part of our package. And so I would say that for us, just you'll get to talk to Rand, I think, at some point here after the cut down. But the philosophy from the end to the back of the roster, that those last 6-7 spots is going to be less about checking the box that we have a 5th safety or a 4th tight end or whatever those numbers are going to be, and just finding the best players regardless of the position. And so we're trying to make sure that we don't lose a player that we think could be really good just because we need to check a box on a number. And we're trying to make sure that we do the right job evaluating those players. And so I don't think it'll be hard to keep 4 tight ends if that's what we decide to do, because I think if we do that, then that player will have earned that roster spot. He's worthy of the 53 spot.
So here's your third roster reality from me. I'm convinced at this point they keep 4 tight ends. I think that is going to happen. And as you heard Brian Callahan just say there verbatim, I do not think it will be hard for us to keep a 4th tight end because that player will have earned a spot on the roster. And in my opinion, that player is David Martin Robinson. He has shown out in these first 2 playoff games. JT, he leads the entire team.
But
sorry, what did I say?
Playoffs?
No, not even close. He leads the entire team, all pass catchers in total yards this offseason. Let's see. Let me double check here. 5 catches for, doing quick math, I think 68 yards he has so far. In both games, looked really, really good. Maybe even more impressive than his receiving ability. He has really shown out as a blocker in the run game. He's lining up at that F position, which we talked about this, but if folks aren't aware, Brian Callahan has made this clear. The Titans tight end room is pretty subdivided into 2 groups. Guys that are playing F, which is the adjuster role on offense. It's going to be that fullback move type tight end, and then guys that are playing the Y, which is that more traditional inline tight end that's going to be running up the seam and doing that kind of thing. The guys that are playing Y are Josh Wiley at the top, and then Nick Vannett, the veteran who you've not seen of in these preseason games, but they went out and got him. He's making the roster. He's going to be tight end 3. The F right now is Jha'quan, and if they keep 3 tight ends, it'll just be Jha'quan. And so if they only keep 3 guys, they're going to need somebody to be pretty versatile so that if one goes down on one side of that subdivision, they can flip-flop back and forth and be able to do both things at a high level. If you keep 4, then you can be 2 deep. And I feel like that's convenient and makes a lot of sense. And the highest profile tight end on this depth chart playing F, not named Jha'quan, is definitely David Martin Robinson, who is a UDFA rookie, by the way. Folks are wondering, where'd this guy come from? He is new. He's looked really impressive. He can lay a mean block in the run game. And as he's shown, he's a value in the passing game. I don't see any reason why somebody like that does not fit to a T that description by Brian Callahan, a player at the bottom who maybe doesn't check a box numerically, though in this case you could argue it does, but he's just talented enough to be on the team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the convenience, you hit the nail on the head there. Having, someone who can just fill in that role if like a Jha'quan were to go down or anything like that, having him step up and him showing that he can step up already into that role, I think is invaluable and probably a really compelling argument to keep him on the 53. Also, just talking about his performance, seeing DMR out there just absolutely ball out gets me excited for the ways they're going to use both of them, but DMR and Jha'quan in this offense. That, if DMR is able to be deployed so versatilely out there, every single play, doing different positions and finding ways to get open, I can't wait to see what they do with Chig in that similar role.
Yeah, like we've talked about on the show, whoever's playing that F, whether it's Chig or DMR or Jha'quan Jackson, or I think you might see Treylon Burks in that role some. I think Josh Wiley may play a little bit of that. But a lot of guys are going to touch that F position, I think. It's going to be a fun one to watch. And when that adjuster is moving around on offense, we're going to be keeping our eye on him for sure. So that's the tight end room. And we can touch real quick, I guess, on the offensive line situation, JT. insofar as your starters last night, do we have? I should have written this down. Do you have that list
I
available
have it.
to you?
Yes.
Okay, so who
I have at least.
who
I
are
have at
the
least.
who are the twos last night for the
Yeah,
Titans?
I have
the
that one.
guys that started the game.
I don't have the threes, I believe,
That's
but
fine.
as I go back through my notes here, the starting O-line yesterday was John Ojukwu at the right tackle spot, Andrew Rupsich at the right guard spot, Daniel Brunskill at center, Simmons at the left guard spot, and then Jalen Duncan at the left tackle.
So my only note on the offensive line is that the depth on this team, like after you get past the starting five, which are pretty set in stone, by the way, Brian Callahan today was asked, hey, who's trending in the right direction on offense, the offensive line? And he went out of his way to say, well, our two starters on the right side, NPF and Dylan Radins, I'd say they're both trending in the right direction to be the starters. Not going to lock that in for sure. I reserve the right to change that. But so far, those are the guys, and they're trending upwards. Everybody else on this depth chart is kind of brutal. It's really rough out there, man. And what that leads me to believe is I think the next roster reality here, to stick with the theme of today's show, I think anybody on this depth chart beyond the starting five still is with less than 10 days before cut down day can absolutely make a case for themselves to make this roster. I think it's anybody's ball game. And I think certain younger guys that have more perceived upside may have more of an inside track than you would otherwise believe just because they don't have a ton of veteran competition. Cole Spencer is the one that comes to mind for me. He's somebody we've kept our eye on really up and down preseason. Game one was a very pleasant surprise. Last night, the early returns on him were not as great for sure, kind of a down game for him. I would not be shocked at all if they keep a guy like that over somebody fans are maybe more familiar with, just because all of these guys are really rough, and let's at least keep somebody that is young and healthy, and a guy like Bill Callahan thinks he can mold into something much more.
Yeah, I would say definitely that, Cole Spencer, for as many bad moments that he had last night, a lot of missed blocks, a bad holding call late into the game there. For that, I think he flashed a little bit still last night. The play of the night for him was on a Jabari Small's biggest run, I think, last night, which was about 15 or 16 yards. Cole Spencer does a really nice job setting the second level and getting to that second level to block for him. And so, Jabari Small. That
was the moment you added him to your fake roster. You said, yes. Oh, Cole Spencer gets to the second level. Welcome to the team. Welcome to the team, Cole Spencer.
If you can be a plus blocker on a play that gets Jabari Small double-digit yards on a rush, I think you deserve a spot there. Sorry to be a little harsh, but it's true.
Listen, it's true. It's harsh, but
true. So I do believe that, because of the things that how they went about the offseason, between keeping him as a developmental player, how much they gave him in UDFA money, it makes sense for him to probably be that last guy in, I would say. But then again, I really would not be surprised if he doesn't make the roster and Bill Callahan ends up keeping a lot of the veteran guys he feels more comfortable with. That also is a reality. It really is the toughest spot for me to project right now. Like, I really just feel like I have no idea what's going on in Bill Callahan's brain, from like offensive tackles 6 through 11 and who makes it in, who makes it out. So that's going to be fascinating to watch next week.
Yeah, when we grade our final prediction for the 53 against what actually happens, I'm going to have gotten like 4 of them wrong, and 3 of them will be offensive linemen, because you can really just throw a dart, and I have no idea who is and is making this team. The last offensive group to touch on here is the running back competition. And here's your next roster reality. The Titans running back competition is also over. I think it's a wrap. Preseason king Julius Chestnut, the nasty nut, is your running back 3. The deployment last night was really the key, right? Because we saw Julius Chestnut pretty much get the entirety of the first half. He got the most run out of all of the backs, 13 attempts for 45 yards on the ground, had a couple of receptions for 29 yards through the air, doing his thing. Then you had Jabari Small come in for nearly half of the amount of run that he got. And then Hassan Haskins wrapped up the game with only 5 attempts for 13 yards. Neither of the other two really did anything of note. Jabari Small, as we've talked about, is the most pre-cut player among the most pre-cut players on this roster. He's a young developmental guy that is your quintessential practice squad body, so he'll be a practice squatter. No worries there. And And then Hassan Haskins, you could convince me, once again, he falls into that charity guys at the bottom of the depth chart who you just are looking for the best players, and his acumen on special teams would be what gets him in as the 49th, 50th overall player. So maybe they keep 4 running backs and he fits that mold and they just want him as a special teams ace. But yeah, I'm pretty certain at this point that it's Chestnut and nobody else is really giving him a run for it.
Yeah, definitely Chestnut is running back 3, and that was the question I was probably going to pose to you. I do still see a reality in which Hassan Haskins does make the roster on special team prowess alone. Like that is where I am currently sitting at. I wouldn't be shocked, but also with this team right now and how they kind of deploy their running backs, there are other guys who are contributing enough on special teams to where it feels like a running back 4 who's really there just for special teams. Like there's better roster management options out there, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't answer how I feel about that for sure until I sit down and do the thing. And we're going to do that for Tuesday's show. I think we're going to both go through our final predictions for the 53-man roster. So I don't know. He's very much, if he's in, he's going to be like number 50, 51, 52, 53 for sure. Let's wrap up the offensive side of the ball here by just listening to this clip from Brian Callahan after the game last night. Here he is on Julius Chestnut and the running back competition.
Julius has played well for himself. He's put himself out there, played well overall, done all the things we asked the running back to do. So he got the first carries. And then I think Jabari Smalls played really well too. And so we got some competition there. And I think that those guys have played probably a little bit better than Hassan at this point. And obviously Hassan is a special teams demon, and that matters too. So that competition is ongoing. We got another week to go. Credits.
All right, now to the defensive side of the ball. Where'd my notes go? They just disappeared from my screen. Okay.
Well, I think it's a good transition as you pick that up.
Yeah,
Joey Turner in the comments here, as he says, feels like if there are any extra spots at the end of the 53, it's got to go to the interior linebacking room. Murray, Givens, Campbell, Reese, Gray, Williams. That's a lot of interior linebackers, and a lot of them are performing well.
Absolutely. And that is a perfect transition for us, Joey, because that is where we're going first on the defensive side of the ball. Some thoughts on performers last night, but let's start with a clip from Brian Callahan. This is kind of a long one, but it's the best one I think we have today. I asked him a couple of questions at today's press conference. The first about James Williams, the Titans' 7th round draft pick, who showed out last night. He's my favorite of the guys that we saw last night. And just what his upside is, what traits they liked in him coming out. And the second question is about, you may have forgotten about him, Cedric Gray, the Titans' 4th round draft pick, asking about if there's any chance he falls too far behind, having missed a lot of this important period of training camp with that shoulder injury.
To the scouting staff and then our defensive coaches that evaluated him too, they felt like he had the traits to move into the box and play linebacker. Obviously had some development to go, but to have the foresight in the scouting process to recognize that and see it. And then, you take a 7th round pick on a guy that's got developmental potential. It's exactly what you want to do with those picks. And so really well done on the scouting staff and by our coaching staff to agree on that they saw something in him worth investing in. He's just, the thing for him is he's got to learn. He does the things really, really fast in practice, and he does a lot of really great stuff. And then he slows in the game a little bit. And so it's more just getting comfortable playing, with your eyes as a linebacker in the box. It's a different style than even what a safety does when they're down in the box. So that development will be key for him, but he's come a long way in a really short amount of time. I think Frank Bush, we're lucky to have Frank. I think Frank's is an elite linebacker coach, and I think you see that by how those guys have developed and played. And so I think Frank's a huge part of that developmental process, and James is really taken to it. So obviously a long way to go for him, but a lot of potential, I think, to be a really good inside linebacker.
And on the topic of linebacker, Cedric Gray is somebody that a lot of fans had high hopes for. He's been injured and not around. Is he at risk of falling too far behind in this process? What do you make of him so far?
Yeah, it's not good when you miss that amount of time. Can you make up the ground? Sure, it's not impossible. But yeah, there's a point where you'd like to see, you got to get out there and play. And I think one of Cedric's strengths is that he's instinctive, and just playing football is something that he's good at. And to miss 2 opportunities in the preseason to see that, I think is tough for him. The injury, he can't do anything about the injury. It's not his fault. But yeah, that's just the nature of training camp and the nature of football, is that sometimes an injury can hold you back, and the guys like James and Chance are getting a lot of opportunities to show that they're up to the task as well. So I wish we had a chance to look at them, but it's just the nature of it.
So let's tackle them one at a time. James Williams is the first guy he talked about there, and JT, the crux of my question was a couple of weeks, I think it was after last week's preseason game, he said, Brian did, I'm not sure if James knows how good a linebacker he can be yet. And he, I think, demonstrated what that means by pointing out in this answer, there are things he does in practice that are so fast. The way that he triggers on the ball, really, really impressive. And you and I have seen that. And then he gets to the game and is slower in those same things, maybe not as sure of himself, maybe not processing at the same speed. He's just got to get that confidence, get those veteran tendencies that you can only get with reps. I was really impressed with him again last night. I agree wholeheartedly with Brian Callahan when he says that the potential there is sky high. I don't know. I think him and Jaylen Harrell, who we're going to talk about later in the show, are 2 great examples of the confidence that I have and is growing within me, that Rand Carthen really knows what he's doing when it comes to drafting these late round guys.
Yeah, I mean, through everything that has gone on over the past 2 years, like that was one of the biggest things when Rand had his introductory press conference, was how much he loves to dive into those late rounds and find the guys who are hidden gems. And I feel like 2 years later, we've kind of forgotten about that because of everything else that has gone on. But that is still what Rand Carthen's bread and butter was when he came in. And so I'm with you. I'm excited. This was technically, as Rand puts it, what felt like his real first draft, where he was
there was somebody else helping make the decisions the first time. So,
yeah. So I think that, being able to see him find these gems like a Jaylen Harrell and a James Williams, and then put him with guys who have, like he said, like Frank Bush, Denard Wilson, Chris Harris, these guys who, have some tenure and experience, and
they're developers.
Exactly. And so that, does so much for some of these young players in the 6th and 7th rounds.
As for Gray, as Joey says in the comments, at this point, it'd almost be more beneficial for Gray to end up on PUP or the IR to get him a redshirt season to make the inside linebacker room easier to keep everyone. I was surprised by how candid Callahan was with that answer. Yeah, I asked him point blank, can he fall too far behind? And Callahan essentially said, maybe, kind of. It's not great. This inside linebacker group is maybe the most interesting in terms of projecting the roster cut down, because there are so many, and somebody said it a second ago, it was Jody as well. Jody's nailing it in the comments today. They've got 6 deep in there, despite having a number of injuries so far that have knocked out guys that it feels like we haven't talked about in years, even though it was just last week. They're down to 6 guys that you could justify keeping all 6, because obviously your starters in Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons are making the team. Chance Campbell, here's another roster reality for you, by the way. Chance Campbell, another impressive night last night, flying around all over the ball. JT, he's linebacker 3, right? Chance Campbell is your linebacker 3 going into the year. I don't think there's any question about it. You agree?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think
Okay.
the first 3 are definitely kind of set in stone. It's after that where I think it gets really interesting.
Exactly. So it's those 3, and then you have to look at Otis Reese, who is hurt. It was concussion protocol, right? That he's in. Do you remember today?
I'm not
he said
sure.
it at the top of the show, and I've already forgotten. He's hurt and missing. But he had a really nice game last night. Then you've got James Williams, who is looking really good and is healthy and is young. And then Cedric Gray, who has not really done anything of note, but is your 4th round rookie who fans had a lot of high hopes for. We know the coaching staff had high hopes for and thought highly of him enough to make him their 4th round pick. You don't just give up on that. He's not getting cut. He's a 4th round rookie. But as Joey points out, that's kind of on paper, a key candidate for a PUP list, IR, some kind of designation where it may be a lost portion or a lost entire year for him, just because they may not be able to justify keeping 6 guys. And right now, just in terms of guys that can help now, I don't know how you argue he's not 6 out of 6.
Yeah, just I kind of said it earlier today. He was one of the guys who needed some development coming out. We knew, his vision and his instincts, as Brian Callahan said, are very good, and it's what makes him so fun to watch. The problem is like the other aspects of playing the linebacker position, I think are what needs to be developed for him. His ability to make tackles, his ability, in coverage as well, I think are the things you needed to see. And it's a shame, and obviously it's out of his control, but it's frustrating because this is, the guy that we thought would develop eventually into like their green dot guy who really knows how to wear it for the first time in a long time. And so, like you said, it may shake out to the point where it may be worth keeping him on PUP and IR and just getting him developed and coming back at it next year. Because like you said, you have to keep these guys. Like if James Williams, Chance Campbell, Otis Reese, these guys are going out on the field and producing. So,
well, we have until Tuesday for both you and I to figure out who we think they keep and how many of them they keep. But that is an interesting group. Moving on here on defense to a guy I promised a moment ago, Jaylen Harrell. Here's your next roster reality. Harrell Steria, which we may need to workshop that. It sounds like something you contract by swimming in the Amazon River. Like I don't. It sounds like did you hear? You can't eat deli meat right now because there's Harrell Steria going around. But it is Harrell Steria right now. Welcome to the roster. That's your next roster reality. Is Jaylen Harrell is on this team. The other 7th round rookie out of Michigan. Not just welcome to the squad, but welcome to playing meaningful snaps immediately as a 7th round rookie. I think he's your 3rd best edge right now. I have seen, frankly, nothing of note from Rashad Weaver the entire offseason. We know that Arden Key, there's some news on him, so he'll be back. We'll talk about that in the news section here in a second. But Jaylen Harrell is, with a bullet, the most talented edge, not named Arden Key or Harold Landry on this team right now, and he's only getting better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's saying something about how good Jaylen Harrell has looked. It's also saying something about how barren this edge room is. Like you said, Rashad Weaver has shown little to nothing. I know we talked about him at OTAs as maybe showing some pop, maybe looking a little better and stronger, but he really has struggled to get after the passer in these preseason games. Caleb Murphy, I know, is a story people like to hold on to. He has shown maybe even less than Rashad Weaver has.
And Caleb Murphy will always be a real edge rusher in our hearts.
But Jake brings up in the comments here, any chance that the Titans go out and get another edge guy because of how barren this room is?
I'm going to say probably not. And if I am allowed to modify the question to any chance they go and get a guy of any impact, I'm going to say almost definitely not. I don't think that's happening. So, no, I think they're really banking on those top 2 guys and Jaylen Harrell and maybe Rashad Weaver. I don't know.
I think Rashad Weaver.
Shane Ray is still around. Shane Ray comeback season.
Who do you think is more likely to make the roster right now? Shane Ray or Rashad Weaver?
So Shane Ray, I would say, I'm going to say Rashad Weaver just because of the way they're rotating him. But Shane Ray is like a black hole in my opinions when it comes to, like, I look up and down the roster, and because he's a veteran who we've seen practically none of in the preseason, and he's not made a bunch of plays in practice recently that I can mentally go back to. I don't really know I almost asked Brian Callahan today, just straight up, like, what do you guys think of Shane Ray? I might ask him this week. I might ask the coordinators who we get on Tuesday or Wednesday, because I don't know what they think. So I'll say Weaver, but I'm not banking on either to really make an impact. Here, let's hear from his head coach. Here's Brian Callahan on Jaylen Harrell. I asked him if he's surprised by how quickly he's come along.
No, I'm not surprised. He comes from he played in a similar style of defense, and he's been coached. He came from a blue blood program. Those guys tend to show up. They play in big games. They played in winning programs. They know what it takes. So we've seen all that. And then he plays a physical brand of football in college, and it turns out he plays a physical brand of football here. He's been really, really good in the run. I think he's developing as a rusher. He's shown up. He's got production on the quarterback, but he's learning how to rush the NFL way, which I think is he's going to improve rapidly in that way too. But he's risen. I mean, he is as a 7th-round pick that, nobody thought much of to being probably a pretty strong rotational player for us. It's been good to see.
Same as probably a pretty strong rotational player is about as high praise at this point in the process you can get as a 7th-round dart throw. Yeah, man, that comment there near the end where he says he's learning to rush the NFL way now is a fascinating one to me. And that's on my short list of things to implore about this week at practice to see maybe what exactly they mean by that. What are the next steps for him? What is he working on in particular there? But I think all things are pointing north for Jaylen Harrell right now.
Yeah. And not to stroke his ego a little too much, but I remember back on our day 3 live stream where we were talking about Jaylen Harrell and we're like, what is the thought behind this pick? And Zach Lyons goes, oh, it's because he's a Michigan guy. And you hear that from Brian Callahan right there. That's definitely a part of it. These 7th-round guys that they found in James Williams and Jaylen Harrell are guys who come from,
it's the IQ chart meme. JT. Yeah, it's the IQ chart meme of like the moron, the average guy, the Jedi Master, and the moron's like, duh, draft the guy from big school. And the guy in the middle's like, well, actually, the DVOA from this guy from Iowa State, and then the Jedi guy's like, draft the guy from the big school. That's what they are employing, and it's working. It's working. So, all right, the last roster reality we have to share here is
big news in the comments though from Stoney. We have to talk about this.
Excuse me, breaking input here from Stoney at where's he? Bed Bath and Beyond. Hand soap, $2.95 this weekend only.
Bath and Body Works, maybe.
Bath and Body Works. No free shouts, but apparently free shouts for hand soap that is cheap this weekend. So thank you for that, Stoney. Our reporter on the ground doing the important journalism. The last roster reality we have to share with you is along the cornerback depth chart lines. JT, this beyond cornerback.
I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what
beyond
to do with
cornerback 4. This team's group is really brutal. Cornerback 1, 2, 3, and 4 could not be any. They're in a different universe than cornerbacks 5 through 10.
I would probably go cornerbacks 1 through 3.
Okay, all right. Well, I know we disagree on this, so let's break it down. Let's start with what we agree with. Right? Definitely, we agree. The Titans starting 3. We did almost a whole show on it earlier in the year. We think that their starters, you can put them up against pretty much any other cornerback room in the league. Cheeto Awuzie, Roger McCreary, and L'Jarius Sneed. Those cats can ball. No worries there.
Except against Jake Bobo. But
and frankly, who amongst us can handle Jake Bobo?
True.
On the back end of the roster, it gets really rough, man. It's Gabe Judy Lolly, or as Terry refers to him, Gabe Aneurysm Lilly. He is a good man corner who is flashing ability in a press capacity, and that's why the Titans, they went out and got him. That's what they like in him. That's his skill set. When you have him play in zone, which is a thing you also have to do when you play safety in the NFL or a corner in the NFL, you saw him. Just go back and watch last night and just stare at him in the secondary. Whenever they're in zone, he is constantly drifting and leaking and or lost. He gets put in a blender pretty quick back there. That he just needs time. He's crazy raw. Then you get to Trey Avery, who is starting, frankly, to really tick me off. Nothing personal, absolutely nothing personal, but he's starting to tick me off. He's that level of player where, yes, I get it. He's a veteran. He's a contributor on special teams. He's your 5th cornerback, and he's going to make the roster. And he's not. You don't want him out. You do not want him out there in a real game. But what are you going to do? Is you can't have a great 5th corner. Well, he's at the point for me where, yes, I agree, not that great. But what are you going to do? Can we churn that position? Like, can we just start getting some bodies in here and just throw darts and see if anybody else, like, I don't know, man. It has remained true all August, all off season. And frankly, for a couple years now, when in doubt, target Trey Avery. And he got torched last night by a guy named Aesop, who that's not even a real name. I don't know what to do with Trey Avery. And it's really bad. And then Eric Garror is the only other guy anybody knows. And he is what he is. He's a below replacement level nickel cornerback, and then nobody, Anthony Kendall, Robert Javier, nobody else on this depth chart moves the needle even a little bit.
Yeah, I would say probably like out of the guys in the secondary right now, both the safety and corner, like I think we need to start talking about how cornerback is really now the biggest glaring like depth problem on the dashboard, I think. And we kind of have a little bit of a difference, in our opinions of Jarvis Brownlee. I think he's an amazing player, but
what happened to you, bro? How'd you go to the dark side?
There were
JT now thinks that Jarvis Brownlee Jr., our crush since February, is bad at football. Can you believe this?
I did not say that. First
of
all,
explain yourself then.
It's the same thing as JC Latham. He can look so good and we can have such high expectations, but we have to remember that he's a rookie. Like these things are going to happen. And so the fact that we're relying on him to not have moments, out there and expect him to be a reliable guy who can come in and take snaps if one of these other three guys goes down, that's a problem to me, because like you said, after Jarvis Brownlee Jr., there's like we talked about last week, all those other guys in that corner room right now are guys that you say, oh snap, this is a problem. Like we cannot,
we're screwed.
We're screwed is basically what you're doing once you get past that cornerback 4. And so I agree with you. I would not be surprised after roster cutdown day if they maybe go with like 5 corners for right now and then go shopping in the bargain bin around the country for
Who's
guys who got
Who's
cut.
Getting cut? Welcome to the Titans.
Yeah. That's where I feel right now on this cornerback room.
So I don't think we actually disagree on Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Do you not agree that he is clearly the 4th corner on this team?
He definitely is, but
okay.
I think we disagree in our confidence level on that.
Well, I think you have the first 3 on one side of the Grand Canyon, and then you have Jarvis walking the tightrope dead in the middle, and then everybody else is on the other side. Well, actually, not on the other side. They're at the bottom. They're in the river a mile down. I think that's the reality. And so, he's going to develop. I think by the time you need him, if it's week 9, he's going to be a different player than he is in preseason week 2, or at least that's the idea. Yeah. So let's just hope that they don't need him earlier. Don't worry about it. Okay.
I agree.
The last thing, we're done with offense. We're done with defense. Before we get to the news with producer JT, we said we'd mention it. We will mention it. Little Brayden Narveson talk. Just have to kind of shut this down. I really hate to be the rainer on the parade here. I do. But a number of folks last night, after they saw Brayden Narveson, 4th quarter king, nail one from 59. Looked like it was going to be good from like 65. And then at the very end of the game with time expiring, hits, 47 yard field goal?
Somewhere around there. It
north of 45.
It was firmly on the outside edge of the Randy zone is where I would.
Is that the description? Yeah,
yes.
I've got it written down. I'll tell you exactly what it was. He hit from, hold for effect, 59, obviously, and then from 46 to end the game and win the game. Very cool moment. Not trying to take anything away from that. But folks were saying, especially about the 59-yard field goal, like, oh, Nick Folk, old man Folk, granddaddy strong legs Folk, he can't hit from 59. Lord knows. If he has to hit from 52, we're worried about it. So what do you do about that? Is this the Ryan Stonehouse moment? Suddenly overtaking Brett Kern, the old incumbent? No, it's not. And I get why folks are thinking that. JT and I can tell you from firsthand experience, or don't take our word for it, take the head coach's word for it, in the game press conference right after the game last night, saying he's not pushing for that job. Tonight did not change that. If you all had seen all of Brayden Narveson's performance through camp, not just last night's preseason game, you just trust me, you wouldn't be saying this. You would not be saying this. I'm not. We're not going to say anything more about it. We are not here to rain on this dude's parade. Very cool moment for him. He's a young player. He's going to develop. Not worried. Like good for him. Big moment. But he's not. Also, Nick Folk is making almost $4 million in guaranteed money this year. So there's also that.
But apparently they could save around $800,000 if they cut Nick Folk. So maybe that'll be good for the cap. I don't know. I would say the only thing other than that is the big argument is like, yeah, he can hit from outside Nick Folk's range. Well, the counter to that is that I don't think Brian Callahan wants to be worried about being outside Nick Folk's range. Like the goal is to get it into the range where Nick Folk is going to be automatic. Like
exactly.
If you want the guy who's going to be hitting 59 yarders, you should be a little bit more concerned about your offense barely being able to get to the 59-yard line, So I think that's the reasoning there behind that.
All right, that's our breakdown from the Titans' thrilling preseason win last night. All we have left to do is a little bit of news with producer JT. JT, what do we got?
Yeah, let's start with the biggest breaking story, his debut as a beat reporter, as a guy breaking the news. Jeffrey Simmons from trash talking and going back and forth with the media to becoming one of us. He breaks the news yesterday that Arden Keys' 6-game suspension was reversed and has been dropped. So Arden Key, welcome back to the squad. He's here to stay now.
Good for Arden Key. Listen, man.
If you want any other, I was about to say, like, that's all we know. If you want any other details, we don't have them. I think we have a clip. I think we have a clip here from Brian Callahan, who he even says that he's not going into the details. Like,
roll the clip.
If you want anything else, here's what Brian Callahan had to say, which is basically the same as us.
They were the last time we talked about it. It's a league matter, and until we get any kind of official word from the league, then I'll refrain from comment, just like I did last time. So that's about all I can answer on that one.
We asked him again today, by the way, and he also says, I don't know, that's the league will handle it when the league handles it. This is tough scene for us, because I've said multiple times on the show, including on Thursday, right before this news came out, that guys, relax, he's getting suspended. My reasoning was because in the history of PED suspension appeals, I believe the number is one person has ever won an appeal. That number doubled because Arden Key did it. So hey, listen. Happy to be wrong about that. Good for Arden Key. He was all smiles when he walked into the Titans facility last night, into Nissan Stadium last night. He said he'd talk this week about it, so we'll talk to him this week about it. I'm very hopeful that he gives us the story as to why. I've been racking my brain.
I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, man, I don't know, because folks have commented online and been like, well, maybe it was because he proved that he didn't know it was in the drug. No, that's not it, because dudes all the time, like the PED list in the NFL is a crazy long, it's a CVS receipt of things. It's a crazy long list. And it's stuff that's not just in anabolic steroids. Like, it's stuff that you get in all kinds of drugs that are for other things, pain management and arthritis and the common cold, whatever it is you're taking medicine for, you may pop a PED list thing if you don't check it against the NFL list. And guys get wrong prescriptions all the time, or don't know what's in their prescriptions all the time, and that's how they get flagged. That's what happened to Nico Autry, as he outlined in his letter. So with Arden, I don't, like, maybe he proved that it was an NFL doctor that gave him the prescription, and by the bylaws, it's not his fault. Or maybe he proved that it was like a drug administered during a cleanup surgery, and that, he didn't consent to it being given, didn't to be able to check. Maybe it's a thing that maybe he went all the way to saying, hey, this thing's on the list technically, but here's the latest scientific study that proves it's not actually performance enhancing, and so you should take it off the list and you should give me a pass. Otherwise, I feel like those are all the possibilities. Unless he was like, hey, you mixed up my pee sample with some other dude. Like, I don't know what. Yeah,
I have no idea either. Like, maybe it is just as simple as that they got swapped or something. Like, that would be hilarious.
We find out, like, breaking on Monday, some other high named edge rusher elsewhere in the league suddenly popped for a PED. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, more to come on that, I guess. I think we all want clarity on that. But bottom line, it's good to have Arden Key back, because the Titans really need him out there, as we laid out with the edge room.
Oh, I know what it is. I know what happened. No, it's always the simplest answer. He had poppy seed chicken the night before his drug test. He forgot about the drug test. Classic high school football mistake. He popped positive for, what does that make you positive for? It's like Coke or something.
I think
opiates. It's an opiate thing. Yeah. Opiate. So that's what it was. He had poppy seed chicken. He just had to go find the receipt from the restaurant, and then they gave him a pass.
Yes. All right, moving on here. Per Aaron Wilson 2 days ago, so a little bit more recent news, the Titans are working out former Browns and FSU football defensive tackle Marvin Wilson today. So that was, I guess, 2 days ago, which would be Friday, I guess. Thursday or Friday. He played for the Birmingham Stallions championship squad this past season, and so this is kind of telling, because they continue to churn the defensive tackle spot for those last couple spots. It sounds like we talked about guys like Isaiah Aiton and Quentin Bohanna, the
witness protection king.
Witness protection king, Quentin Bohanna. So it sounds like their jobs are definitely not, they are not safe from being cut as they continue to bring in more guys and work them out.
That was also on the heels of us finding out for sure that Marlon Davidson is out for the season.
Yes.
So that may be kind of a 1-for-1 thing, or they had a plan for Davidson role wise. They're looking for somebody to fill it. They don't think they have a guy on the roster that can. But yeah, I think that he may not be the last of the guys you see churned in as they try to find somebody here at the end.
And then finally, a couple more notes about returning Titans this week and then the structure of next week's preseason game. Brian Callahan said today that Chido Awuzie should be returning to the practice field as soon as next week. So that is good news. And Brian Callahan also said that the Titans starters will get a little bit of a tune-up in their third and final preseason game at New Orleans. So that will make for some more entertaining football, at least for a little bit, I guess. So
yeah, he was vague about how long. He said he was like 3-ish series or whatever that looks like, which is really leaving your door open. I'd love to see a full quarter for them. I'd actually love like close to a full half, but if we got a full quarter from the starters, that'd be very nice. I think they need it. I think you also have to take into consideration, and some might see this as like, well, you're reading too much into it. Their first opponent is the Bears in week 1 on the road. They have a rookie quarterback and a lot of new pieces, and those guys on the Bears have gotten a lot of run this preseason. You've seen it all over your timeline if you're on social media. Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze and old man Keenan Allen are out there. They're playing in these games. Not a ton, but they're getting preseason reps, and they're going to be in good shape. They're going to be tuned up in that way. I think the Titans will be wise to try to match that energy so that they don't come out flat. And, that's the kind of thing that can cost you your mom. I got a text from my mom that I glanced at as I said, meant to say game. It can cost you the game. I'll get back to you, Mom. I'm going to go get to my mom because I think that's the end of the show. Anything new? We got okay.
No, that's
cool.
That's going to do it.
I'm going to go call my mother. Folks, call your mom today. Tell her you love her. We'll be back on Tuesday afternoon recapping nothing, right? Yeah, because nothing's happening.
53-man prediction.
We'll be not recapping, yes, but previewing the 53-man roster cut down. We will be giving all of our thoughts, our takes on who does and doesn't make the roster. JT and I will finish our rosters to see who is the most accurate. Maybe we'll revisit the one that I did before training camp to see how wrong it already is in our eyes. Until then, we will talk to you on Tuesday. Make sure you're liking, subscribing. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. Have a great rest of your weekend.